I'm not exactly an expert in matters of the heart.
Neither am I.
Well, I thought something was bound to go wrong with my track record. And it keeps getting better.
Didn't know you had those sort of feelings.
Men were interested before. But then I'd think, how can a relationship go anywhere with my bizarre life?
Where'd you meet him?
In a shoe shop. We just got talking and he gave me his phone number.
Didn't know people of your age did that sort of thing.
Cheek. Oh, no, I wasn't going to call him, but then I bumped into him again and it got me thinking. I cut myself off from people for all those years. How could anyone like me, with what I know, what I do, ever have proper friends? But then I got you, and Maria and Clyde and Ronnie, and things changed. And perhaps they're changing on this front, too.
You look really happy.
There's still the big problem, isn't there? I can't suddenly spring it all on Peter. Oh, by the way, I used to go traveling through space and time in a phone box with a Time Lord.
My son was created as part of an experiment by the Bane.
I've got a talking computer and a robot dog.
Oh, by the way, my lipstick, it's deadly.
But I do want you to meet him. You know, we just keep all this madness quiet for a bit longer. See how things go. And whatever happens, we're okay. You and me? Night.
Hello and welcome to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast with me, Matthew, and as always I am joined with...
Hello, it's Scott.
Hello, Scott, and we are looking at an interesting episode today as we continue going through Doctor Who semi-chronologically this year. We've taken some diversions.
I mean, this isn't included in our chronological look, by the way.
Yeah. This isn't. So this is one of those other diversions that we've been taking. It's just, every now and then we take a diversion this year, and this is one of them as we look at the Sarah Jane adventures with the episode The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith, featuring Mr. David Tennant. This episode first aired on the 29th of October 2009, which was a Thursday, and a staggering 13 years, 9 months, and 17 days ago at the time of recording. At the time, the US President was Barack Obama, and the UK Prime Minister was one Gordon Brown, and it was, you know, a pretty happy time in politics. He lied, but Gordon Brown, the last Labour Prime Minister of our lifetime, it seems like, because we've been trapped in a Tory hellhole for almost as long as I can remember.
It was a pretty decent time in politics, especially considering, you know, comparing it to now.
Yeah.
The last almost decade now has been insane.
God, I can't... 2016 was almost 10 years ago. Jesus Christ. But could you guess? Could you hazard a guess as to what is raking in the money and is number one at the box office this day in cinema history?
Okay. It's Halloween time. This is Halloween weekend almost. So it's got to be a Halloween movie, but not Halloween movie, but like a spooky movie, you know what I mean? So I'm thinking it's either, it must be Saw or a Paranormal Activity. One of those two franchises that release like every fucking year. It must be one of them. Am I correct?
I need you to make a choice. I can't have you being like, it's this one or this one. Choose one.
Paranormal Activity.
Oh man, if only you said Saw, then you would have been wrong, because of course it was Paranormal Activity raking in all the money this time in cinemas.
You got me.
It reached number one at the box office after 4 weekends of
which
a limited
Saw is
release.
this?
This is Paranormal Activity 1.
Oh yeah, Paranormal Activity. So it's the very first Paranormal Activity. It's Jesus.
Yeah.
I've not seen a single one of those movies.
They're fine. I remember being a kid. I think I must have watched them when I was first like 12 or 13. And by that point, there was like 20 Paranormal Activity movies or something. And I remember binging through them with my brother and our friend and being very scared by them. And then I watched them earlier this year. I watched the first one, and my sweet Christ, I've never been more bored by a horror movie. Like, it was dull as death. Absolutely nothing was happening. And I was like, I don't remember why this scared me as a kid, because this is awful.
Yeah. I've never seen any of the Saw movies either, but
You've never seen any of the Saw movies. You
No.
are kind of somewhat missing out a little bit, because Saw 1, I've seen every Saw movie except Jigsaw and the Book of Saw, which are on my list to watch before Saw 10 comes out. Because I have a soft spot in my heart for the Saw movies. As awful as they are, I absolutely love that first movie. The first movie is like a genuinely good, like, psychological horror. Like, it's amazing. It's fantastic low budget horror at its best. And then Saw 2 and Saw 3 are pretty decent. They kind of get a little bit off the rails, and then by like Saw 4 to 6 is insane. It doesn't make sense. It's extremely dumb, but it's the right type of dumb where it's kind of fun. Except Saw 6, which is straight up like a bad B movie. Like, the opening scene of Saw 6, I thought they were going to cut at one point to reveal that it was like a fake TV show, and everybody would be like, wow, the acting was so bad in that TV show and the camera work, but it never happened. It just kept going. It was not a good movie. But yeah, I haven't seen Jigsaw or Book of Saw. I hear mixed to negative things about both, so I can't wait to watch them. I'm sure they're amazing.
So would you well, Halloween is almost approaching us. Would you recommend that I watch some Saw movies at Halloween?
Yeah. I genuinely would recommend watching the Saw movies. They are worth a revisit, or for you a first time visit. Like that, especially the first trilogy is solid. The first one is my favorite one. But anyway,
more like a solid.
Wow. Anyway, 2009 is a very good year for cinema, with such hit movies as Marley and Me,
Oh God,
Paul
yes.
Blart Mall Cop, He's Just Not That Into You, Knowing, which if you haven't seen is a Nicolas Cage movie where like most of the world's population gets raptured, but he and a few other people don't, and they have to be like, oh, what happened? Why didn't we get raptured? Monsters vs. Aliens, definitely low-key classic, actually. Fast and Furious, which I don't know if that's the first one or not. Is this the first one?
That would be the
I think
fourth
it must
one.
be.
Because the first one was 2001.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Christ, it is the fourth one is called Fast and Furious. That is a terrible name.
It's like how the fourth Final Destination movie is called The Final Destination, because they wanted it to be the final film, and then they made like 10 more.
They didn't want it to be the final film. The X-Men Origins Wolverine, famously the best X-Men movie. J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, which ended up breaking the Simpsons movie record for the highest weekend debut for a film based on a television, apparently.
Wow.
Television show. Not just based off a television. As well as some other movies such as The Hangover, Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, Bruno, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and G-Force, which is one of my G-Force is one of my earliest memories of being in the cinema ever.
Wow.
I saw that movie in 3D, and it's to date one of my best 3D experiences ever, because I remember a little fly came out of the screen, got like right up in my eye, and then like flew off again. I was like, wow, 3D was amazing. But yeah, G-Force, one of my earliest memories I have of being in cinemas. G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, District 9, an amazing movie, Inglourious Bastards, The Final Destination, as previously mentioned, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Zombieland, Michael Jackson's This Is It, Twilight movie, the saga New Dawn or New Moon, whatever the fuck, New Moon, And of course, last but not least, I've skipped over a few this year, but last but not least, the big one is, of course, Avatar, which releases in December of this year and goes on to become the highest grossing movie of all time until Avatar 2? No, until Avengers. Avatar 2 still made billions, but it didn't break record. But first Avatar movie, good time. I remember being blown away by that as a kid.
I've still not seen Avatar 1 properly. You know the story where I went to France with my school, and on the bus, there's an option of either watching Spider-Man 2 on the DVD player on the bus, or Avatar, and people chose Avatar for some reason, even if it was like the least optimal way of watching that movie. Like, Spider-Man 2 is enjoyable wherever you are, but Avatar 2, like the most visually impressive movie of all time, on a bus. Like, on a bus screen.
You mean Avatar 1?
Did I say Avatar 2?
You did.
Well, we got an advanced copy.
Yeah.
Way back in 2010. But yeah, I fell asleep halfway through Avatar 1. I woke up like 20 minutes near the end. And I felt like I didn't miss anything. I don't remember what the plot was, but it's alright.
The plot in Avatar is basically whatever, but for me, like, as a kid, those visuals were crazy, and it just sucked me into the world completely. Like, I didn't, like, the story is, like, basic, actually, maybe it's the capitalists that are wrong, and the natives are the good guys. And they fight back. But like the action set pieces, the CGI is just incredible, and it holds up pretty well. I saw the re-release of Avatar in cinemas a couple years ago when they did it to hype up Avatar 2, and that was a fantastic experience because I had never seen the movie in cinemas before, and I got to see it in the big screen in 3D the way it was actually meant to be seen. And they had re-upped some of the effects and cut out the sex scene, which was like,
nice.
What? But it works a lot better when they're not having the tails to have sex with one another.
Yeah, with ponytails, isn't it?
Yeah, they still have sex, but then it cuts away before they attach the tails, which means I guess the copy of Avatar I have on DVD must be worth slightly more because it's got that tail on tail action in it,
Yeah. It's like owning season 3 of The Simpsons on DVD, where it's got the infamous Michael Jackson episode, which he also died in 2009. So 2009 was a wild year. Crazy that G-Force is your earliest movie memory, because my earliest cinema memory is probably like Scooby-Doo, and that was like 2002.
No. I had that on video, but never got to see it in cinemas.
Great movie.
You got to remember, like I grew up not very wealthy and in the countryside. Cinema's far away. That's a big journey, and we have a big family, so nightmare. But yeah, 2009 was a good time. Avatar 2 was a decent sequel as well. I had fun with it. Very, very pretty movie. But that's all I've got for on this day. I was looking through the history stuff, and 29th of October is such a dull day in history. There was like some French guy who's been elected prime minister 11 times, got elected for the 9th time in like the year 1500 or something, and that was basically it. But
nice.
we've fluff blah for long enough. Let's jump in to the Sarah Jane Adventures, the wedding of Sarah Jane Smith.
Yeah,
shall we
quickly before we go into it?
Just fuck me then. No, we won't.
Usually we do a little writer's corner, but seemingly most Sarah Jane Adventures episodes, including this one, was written by nobody, which is very fascinating. Like, the person who wrote this doesn't exist. It's very strange. But anyway, let's jump into the episode.
There's this weird person that stole their identity and goes on these weird transphobic rants on Twitter. I don't know. Don't really want to. I don't know who that person is. But yeah, let's jump into the Sarah Jane Adventures wedding of Sarah Jane Smith, shall we?
Scan. All normal, Master Clyde.
Yes, so far. You brought the dog. But what did you think was under there? The wedding cake? There's something wrong about this.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Superintendent Registrar. We are here today to witness the marriage of Sarah Jane Smith and Peter Anthony Dalton. In each other's company, they have found happiness, fulfillment, and love. And they wish to affirm their relationship with this marriage. Now, I have to ask this question. If any person can show just cause or impediment why they may not be joined together, let them speak now or forever hold their peace.
Stop this wedding now! What?
What's going on?
Who the hell is that? Don't believe it.
Who's he?
Master!
I said stop this wedding.
Don't be afraid, Sarah Jane. It's the angel.
The trickster!
Mum! Sarah! Trickster, let her go!
Too late, my lord. You're mine, Sarah Jane Smith. Mine forever.
The episode begins as every episode of Sarah Jane's adventures begin with a character that isn't Sarah Jane talking to us, the camera explaining everything that's going on and what the show is about.
I mean, this only
Because, of
gets
course,
introduced
this is
in
a-
season 3, so...
Yeah, but, you know, you're in season 3 right now. And I've not seen all of Sarah Jane, so for all I know, every single episode is exactly like this. But we open up the episode to Sarah Jane acting weird and being like, okay, I'll see you later then, boy with no belly button, who's my son, and leaving as his two friends come in, one of whom is the Rani and the other one is called like Clyde or something.
Clyde.
And, you know, they're like, why is Sarah Jane acting so weird? Why is she lying to us? We should do a very reasonable thing. Spy on her. Let's track her very whereabouts. Let's follow her footsteps, see where she's going on this date at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, apparently, which is a weird time for a dinner date. It looks like they're having dinner. I guess maybe it's summertime. Maybe the sun just hasn't set, you know?
Who knows?
but
who also
yeah,
cares? Also, K9 is here.
Yeah.
He just got out of the
Yeah.
black hole like the previous episode.
Yeah, he stopped looking at soil samples and he solved the problem in the alternate dimension of Australia that we covered in his show K9, which is a fun show. Hot take, better episode than part 1 of The Wedding of Sarah Jane.
Did you just say hot take?
Hot take, the K9 episode.
No,
the
pot.
K9 episode we covered.
I thought you said
No, I
pot
didn't say that.
take, as in potted plant.
Why would I say that? Right, because of the soil. Right, no, that would be a stretch.
K9 got out of the black hole because obviously the Australian show kind of got cancelled, and they got the license to use K9 again, which he's fun in Sarah Jane Adventures. I think he's the most fun out of like all the other spin-offs he's in. Like even K9, he's terrible in K9, but fun in Sarah Jane Adventures.
Yeah, well, like in K9, he just straight up isn't the K9 we know.
Yeah.
You know, like because they change his body and they change like his personality and make him into this weird guy. And then in the K9 and Company show, like he loves soil so much and educating us about soil. Whereas in this one, he feels like K9 felt in School Reunion. Mm-hmm. You know, it's back to classic K9. And he's like, whatever, it's fun, nostalgia. He looks dumb as hell, and he really contributes nothing to the episode. But he is here, so that's cool. But they, the group of kids, stalk Sarah Jane all the way to a restaurant where she is making out with this dude over the table in a really weird, like, way to kiss somebody, like stretching all the way across. Just wait till you're done dinner. Or, like, why are you kissing now? Or kiss outside the door, then go into the restaurant. This is an inappropriate place to be kissing. I mean, I agree with the kids. There's people trying to eat their food. Nobody wants to watch you making out, you know? Do it somewhere else.
Yeah, and also, according to Clyde, people over 22 cannot kiss in public. So that means you and I have to stop our kissing now because, you know, it's just terrible. Wait, how old are you again?
I'm 23, so yeah, I am. I'm too old to get any kisses anymore. But
But yeah, this
you know,
this is the most generic kids plot they probably do in the Sarah Jane adventures, just following around Sarah Jane because they think something's up, and then it turns out she's got a man. That's really it.
it's very much like a kids sitcom, like, oh, they're trying to hide a date from the kids. Oh, the kids find out they're on a date, and now the kids have to try and keep it secret that they were spying on the parent as they went out on the date, and then shenanigans ensues.
And then one of the kids are against the idea of this old person dating because A, it's gross, and B, it changes the dynamic.
Yeah. But Sarah Jane, it cuts to after the date where the kids are at home just discussing like how much of a posh twat the guy looked like.
You also skipped over the sound of a TARDIS trying to materialize, which got me very excited as a kid.
Yeah. And then they forget about it until the very end of the episode when he shows up again. But yeah, it's some fun teasing, I guess. Even if our characters kind of can't hear it, like Clyde kind of makes a notion, like, what was that noise? But he's the only one that notices it, because he's the only one paying attention at any given time. But Sarah Jane is like, what's going on? You guys are acting very suspicious, and she tricks K9 into revealing that they were spying on Sarah Jane in the dumbest way possible, because K9's like, I'm not allowed, I was told to, like, there's like a veil of silence, I'm not allowed to disclose that information. And then she goes, what information, like, were you told not to disclose? Like, what is the exact orders you were given? And he's like, oh, I was told not to disclose the information that you were out on a hot date and we were tracking you. Like, what, like, how is that? How could you trust K9 with any information at any given point? Like,
like, I know, just K9 is useless.
Yeah, straight up. But she sends everybody on their way. She isn't that annoyed, Sarah Jane, that is. She's actually quite happy because she's all smitten from being on a hot date. And we get a very sweet scene with her and boy with no belly button, whose name I just don't know. As they're like, he's in bed, she's coming to say goodnight, and they're talking about how Sarah Jane never really thought she was going to have a love life because of all the stuff that happened with the doctor and all the aliens she has to fight and stuff like that. Like, how could she bring somebody into that? But since having no belly button child and his two mates and stuff like that, she's softened, and she's like opened up to the idea. And then she bumped into this guy, and then she bumped into him again, and things kind of just happened, and now they're dating and things are cool. And then you realize the episode's called The Wedding of River Song. You're like, wait, they're gonna really rush through this relationship, aren't they?
Of River Song.
The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith. The Wedding of River Song is a better episode.
No, don't worry, because every time I think of this episode title in my head, I always think of The Wedding of River Song as well, even though it came out like 2 years later.
I typed in The Wedding of River Song first when I typed up The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith when I was looking for the air date of the episode to get all the information on it.
It's such an easy mistake to make. But yeah, this scene is very sweet, and I kind of wish the show just went in the direction of, we kind of have a little bit more information about Sarah Jane's personal life. Like, we get a little bit more about her trying to date people and shit, because that would have been interesting to an older audience, but a kid, maybe not so much. So the dating life has to be some evil plan.
I also, I just don't think they cared about the older audience with Sarah Jane Smith. It's CBBC. Like, their target audience is, 7 to 13?
Yeah, roughly, yeah. But as a kid, I was really happy for Sarah Jane at this moment, because I'm like, I really like Sarah Jane. I want her to be happy, and this scene is sweet, and we just never really do anything with her character, because I guess she's 60 years old, and 60-year-old is too old to have a character,
See, at this age, when this came out, I was 9 years old, and I was too old to watch CBBC, so I didn't watch it. Wow. I didn't enjoy any of the shows that were on it. They felt too babyish for me.
Yeah.
So I never watched any of their shows. It ended up me missing Sarah Jane Smith because I just wouldn't pay attention to CBBC at all because it's like, I don't really care about what's on there. We had Sky for a few years, so I'd watch Cartoon Network because, you know, there's some slightly more mature cartoons on Cartoon Network, a bit more wacky and creative feeling. Or I'd be watching like The Simpsons or something like that. But I wasn't watching a lot of TV at this age. I was outside a lot, playing with my friends or playing with my siblings, or I was playing on the PlayStation, or, you know, I was doing other things, not watching TV. So this is my first time watching this episode, and definitely, you know, too old to fully enjoy this episode, but it's got some merit.
You know, as a kid, I really enjoyed this show because I was roughly the target demographic. I think this show is slightly aiming for the older demographic of CBBC viewers because it's like 12,
definitely
for 12-year-olds. I was about 12 when I watched this, so I was a good age for this show. CBBC around this time was a bit shit, in my opinion, as well, because a lot of the shows were just pure garbage, and this is when I was starting to phase out of my enjoyment of, like, kids' channels in general, but, you know, I still hung in there for a few more years, watched the occasional show like Horrible Histories or Little Howard's Big Question, and Sarah Jane, obviously, but I think after Sarah Jane, I just tuned out of the channel altogether. God knows what they're airing these days.
I don't know. They're online now, aren't they? Or has that not happened yet?
Almost. I think it hasn't happened yet. CITV is going online in like autumn, I think. So.
That's sad. I watch so much CITV.
I know. Terrible.
Not out of my free will. Like I have three younger siblings, so it was like I had 3 times of experiencing kid shows. So I'm well versed in kids programs for, like, you know, 2000s into like at least 2015, but not out of my free will. I wouldn't choose to watch it. But yeah, CITV was a good one. Shame it's going online where no one will watch it, because what 5-year-old is going online to watch videos?
What 5-year-old is going on ITVX? I know. It's like,
yeah.
Why ITVX? It's ridiculous. But at the end of this scene, Luke hears the TARDIS again. I guess he hears it, or is it just for the audience? I guess he hears it as well. I don't know.
I don't know. But we then get a very, very ludicrous scene that goes on way too long. Starts off with Luke being like, do I call this guy Dad that I'm about to meet? Do I call him Dad? Is he my dad now? Is this Daddy? And K9's like, yeah, you should definitely call him Dad.
Call him Daddy,
As we then cut to Sarah Jane as she gets given a parcel that says fragile on it and handled with care. And this is important plot information. This is very, very important to the structure of the entire story, is this parcel that she gets.
I think this parcel is like the entirety of their CGI budget for this 2-parter. Like, I don't think there's any more CGI in the next
part. Most would be when the TARDIS is like half there and half not.
I guess.
But like that's the very little CGI, you know, comparatively to a full alien creature you have to animate, breaking out of a box and stuff like that. You
know, instead of a CGI creature, use the money to, you know, shoot an extra scene with David Tennant or something.
Yeah, or get a little puppet.
Yeah.
You know, it's CBBC. You got puppets everywhere. Just get a puppet.
Yeah.
But Clyde comes, or not Clyde, sorry. What's the boyfriend called? I didn't even catch his name.
Peter.
Daddy. Daddy shows up, and he's got some very fake-looking flowers that he hands to Sarah Jane. As Clyde and Rani come running over, as they're definitely not being nosy, they take the parcel of Sarah Jane because it starts to move, and she's like, "Oh my God, there's an alien in this box," or something like that. As Belly Button Boy meets Daddy, and he's like, "Are you my daddy?" And he's like, "I am your daddy. How are you doing?" And there's some quote-unquote comedy that happens with Rani's mum when she goes over to Sarah Jane. She's like, "Oh, I'm just here to go to the shops, I guess, or whatever. Haha, you're called Peter. I'm called what was
Gina.
it? Greta? Gina?
Gita and Peter.
Gita. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, cool. This is, I guess, funny to a parent that is watching this with their kids, that is like grasping at anything to make them go, huh.
Yeah. I'm not the biggest fan of Ronnie's parents, but in small doses, they're kind of funny. There's a funny in episode 1 of this season, they kind of run into the Jadoon, not realizing they're aliens, and that's a funny scene, I guess.
Sure. But in the house with Clyde and Rani,
hold
the
on,
aliens...
sorry. Jita is like, oh yeah, I'm going off to the shops. And then Luke's like, oh yeah, the shops are that way. And then she goes up...
Through my garden.
Through the garden, yeah.
She goes through their garden, yeah.
I don't understand where she's going.
I reckon it is... But you know how the driveway comes in from 2 ways. Like, Peter drives in the way that she comes out. So she's just kind of cutting across the garden. But I reckon it is the script. It just wrote for Belly Button Boy to be like, oh yeah, isn't the shops that way? Not thinking of the location or the blocking or anything like that. And so when they got on set, they're like, wait, hang on. What does that way mean? Because she's surrounded by a fence or by like bushes. I guess she could just go out the other driveway, you know, like she could just walk through their garden. So like every day when she goes to the shops, the route that she has to take is through Sarah Jane's garden. Like
bizarre, but I need to look up this house now on Google Maps to find out where exactly she's going. Is there a back gate? Who knows? Or does she jump over like a bush?
Yeah, no, she just walks through it. She's like the Terminator.
Like Homer Simpson.
Yeah. But with the house with Clyde and Rita, what is it? Oh my god, I forgot her name. Rani. There we go, Rani. With the Rani, the alien starts to break out the box, and that causes K9 to wake up and for him to burst out through the house, ignoring any instructions he was given before. And then Daddy is like, "Oh my god, you have a cool toy robot? I want a cool toy robot. The kids these days get all the best toys. Why don't I get any?" It's really weird that he's interested in owning a toy robot for a child, and then he continues to talk about how much he wants toys and how toys for kids are so much better than they were when he was a kid. Yeah. I'm like, this dude, you've got infinite money. What's stopping you buy it? Like you've got like a posh job. You're like a lawyer or something. Like just buy the toy you want to buy. It's okay.
But yeah, when I was first watching this, I'm like, is what we're trying to get at that Sarah Jane cannot escape any kind of kid because, you know, she starts dating a man child basically. Is that what we're getting at? You know, like.
They did not put that much thought into it.
It is kind of disturbing that Sarah Jane spends all of her time with these kids. It's so weird.
Yeah, but it's kid show logic.
Yeah,
you know, it's just don't worry about it. The kids are essentially adults.
Also,
in the context of the show, or Sarah Jane's essentially a child. She's like the parental figure. Like it would be weird in real life for sure.
It works for this show. I do like the dynamic in this show. It's just weird if you just sit around and think about it in like terms of real life logic.
Yeah.
But yeah, you feel like there should be more comedic moments where something alien is attacking the neighborhood behind Peter here, and they're just trying to distract him away from the alien ship, but none of that happens really. It's like there should be more of a funny situation to get into, you know.
Yeah, the most that happens is when they get in the car to drive away, the alien runs up beside the car, and it's like, haha, but they're all looking the other direction, so they don't see the alien. And that's the end of the hijinks. Like, there's no payoff.
Yeah, there should be more of a... I've just remembered the name of the word. Farce. It should be more of a farce, you know what I mean?
Yeah, more farts. Yeah.
But yeah, the scene ends where... Peter is going to take Sarah Jane and Luke to Italian place to eat Italian people.
Yeah, the new pizza place. I hear they do pizza. The episode continues as we see Sarah Jane in the pizza place eating pizza. So, like, you know, in the Italian restaurant eating pizza, which leads me to believe this is the exact restaurant Mickey Smith was talking about.
It must be, because London only has one pizza
They have
restaurant.
one new pizza restaurant. is new. You know, like specifically new. That's the key thing leading me to make this deduction.
I mean,
is Daddy said it was new and Mickey Smith said it was new.
Yeah,
so,
but
you know,
Daddy said it was new 4 years later. So maybe they closed
yeah,
to reopen.
But maybe
again.
they had a refurbishment. Yeah, you know, maybe they had a refurbishment. But they're eating and they decide to. The scene is relatively pointless to play a prank on Sarah Jane because Sarah Jane is such a journalist. She always asks questions and she always needs to know the answer to anything that's going on. And so when she sits down, they're like, "Oh, we were just talking about. Oh, it doesn't matter." As Sarah Jane starts being like, "What were you talking about? What were you talking about?" But we don't ever get the reveal of like Sarah Jane being like, "Oh, it was a joke." Like they just laugh in her face. Like so for like as far as Sarah Jane's aware, they were just making fun of her and have continued to make fun of her.
I mean, that's what I do with my mum to my stepdad. Just make fun of her behind her back.
We then cut to
we cut to the next scene in such a weird transition where somebody walks across the camera, and this transition gets used quite a bit. It's like a general fade, you know, a person walks across the camera and then it cuts to the next scene, except the frame rate just drops for some reason.
It's just tanks. Yeah, it's really, really slow. But before this happens, briefly, and so briefly we forgot to mention it because it doesn't play into the plot at all. Sarah mentions that she bought the alien on eBay.
Yeah.
And that Mr. Smith, the computer, can just send it back to space, so the problem solved, it's done. They got rid of the alien. Aren't you glad it took up 10 whole minutes of the episode?
I am. and it wasted like maybe £200 on a CGI budget.
Oh, yeah. But Clyde and Rani are stalking Daddy's house on houses for eBay, which I think is the name of the website, as they're like, wow, look, it's for sale and there's newspaper on the windows. What's going on? It's like he doesn't even live here. Let's investigate this place. As we then just cut to Sarah Jane in a different restaurant.
Yeah, it's a different
Daddy.
day. It's like 2 days later.
Yeah, it's such a, like, okay, I guess Belly Button Guy is not doing anything right now. Like, he's got nothing to do, so he's just gone. Sarah Jane's just restaurant hopping.
Yeah,
like,
but the fact that they go to a different restaurant is weird to me because they could have easily set it in a park or somewhere else that's, you know, like a date location. Instead, they just go to 3 different restaurants in this episode.
The only place you can go on a date is a restaurant. If it's not a restaurant, not a date. No kissing if you're over 22. As Daddy says that he loves Sarah Jane, he's like, you know, building up to propose in this very public setting, and there's no pressure on Sarah Jane to say yes at all. As we cut to Rani and Clyde.
The Foley in all of the restaurant scenes are really weird because all you hear is just the scraping of the plates.
Plates getting like clacked together. Yeah.
Like you don't hear anyone talking really, it's just plates.
Yeah, it's weird for sure. It sounds like they're just doing the dishes behind them. But Rani and Clyde break into this guy's house and they're like, wow, it's cold and no one's living here and there's newspaper on the windows that we knew are out already and there's a bunch of mail built up on the door. Isn't this strange? But then Daddy proposes to Sarah Jane. She says yes and gets a ring on her finger. And then the ring glows a really, really bright red multiple times. And throughout the episode, we'll see it glow red. Yeah. And nobody notices it ever until later on in part 2 when Sarah Jane notices it. So it has been glowing red for people to notice. Just no one has bothered to see it until it counts. Like...
most of his characters are blind, I guess. But Rani and Clyde investigating the house is such a weird plot line because the trickster goes to Peter the minute, well, presumably like the minute he dies off of the stairs. So why would Peter then sell the house? And it's very strange. I don't understand this plot line at all, really.
My guess is it is there simply so that they can have some suspicion on Daddy.
Yeah.
You know, so that they can be like, oh, wait, this guy is actually a bit weird, even though, like, you know, he's proposing to Sarah Jane after knowing her for a week. You know, like, is that not enough for them to go, why is he proposing so early? That's a bit strange. I mean, you know, I don't really trust this guy. I don't know anything about him. Like, why does there need to be this empty house plot line as well?
Or they could just simply notice the ring, or you know, or hear Peter talking to himself, presumably talking to the trickster, or anything really. Like there's a million ways to write around this. Instead, they go to a different location, which does waste quite a bit of money because they have to like decorate this house, put up all the props and shit. We could have just set the scene in the attic or something and just have them notice that Sarah Jane's ring is glowing. Oh well.
But
it's weird.
If you don't use your budget, you're gonna lose it. As we then cut to Sarah Jane explaining to everybody that she's going to get married next week, like immediately. This episode's wrapping up, so
because she's like, I'm old as fuck. I'm going to die soon.
Yeah,
might as well just get married, which is kind of tragic because she does die in like a year and a half after this episode airs. But that's really sad.
Yeah. It is. But you know what you're gonna do. As Sarah Jane then kills Mr. Smith, she's like, Mr. Smith, you're about to tell me that my ring on my finger's really weird? Guess what? You're dead now. Bye. She shuts him down. And then everybody just gets excited about the wedding immediately. They're like, why did you do that, Sarah Jane? And she's like, wedding. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're right. Wedding. That's awesome. As everybody gets super, super duper excited about the wedding. And then we just have evil laughter once they all leave. Is it supposed to be the trickster laughing? It's just evil laughter, just disembodied evil laughter going ha 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 as we then cut away. It's like, what? Why did we need this?
Yeah, it's the trickster, but you know. Also in this scene, we find out that Luke is the person who's going to give Sarah Jane away. In the original script, it was going to be the Brigadier. Unfortunately, Nicholas Courtney suffered from a stroke, like just a few weeks before the actual filming of this, so it had to be rewritten at last moment. But which is really tragic because he does die like a year and a half later after this episode airs, like just 8 weeks before Liz Sladen dies, which is really, really depressing, especially since the Brigadier actually appears in the season 2 final, and just watching them interact and saying goodbye in that episode is really, really, really a tearjerker. It's really depressing to watch.
Yeah. But speaking of tearjerkers, at the wedding, we find out that Daddy doesn't have any family. So none of the guests are his. Yeah. They're all Sarah Jane's barber. As we find out, like there's the lady that does her hair, like they're just absolute strangers that Sarah Jane has been like, do you want to come to a wedding?
Yeah, none of them
she has
no
friends or family, I guess. Yeah, it's I guess they just wanted extras, so they had to find a way of justifying it. But also, why do you need to have a big wedding? Like, why? Like, you have just invite the friends and family you have, which is 3 kids and their families. You know. Where's Clyde's family? Does Clyde not have a family? He says his family can't make it.
Yeah. Clyde's dad kind of tried to kill him last episode almost.
Oh, cool.
And his mum is busy apparently because it was so short notice, and the Brigadier is in Peru, and but yeah, nobody ever speaks at this wedding. It's just complete silence, and yeah, it's really strange.
It is, but we get some fun stuff with Rani's parents talking to Daddy as they go in and wait for the venue for Sarah Jane to show up. She shows up in her wedding dress, and it's definitely a white dress. And then Rani shows up in a very pink dress, and it's definitely a pink dress. As they then walk in to the ceremony, and everybody's like, oh wow, you look so pretty, this is so great, and K9's hiding underneath the table very, very hilariously. Like the tablecloth doesn't even cover him, and you could just fully see K9 under that table.
But don't worry about it, it's just, you know.
as he's scanning for alien activity, but he's like, oh, I don't see any. Then the officiant is like, hey, does anybody hate this couple and doesn't want them to get married, as is tradition in every marriage where we say, who hates this couple? Now's your time to say you hate them. And then Mr. Davy T shows up. And he's like, yo, slow the horses. I'm the doctor, and you guys can't get married. You gotta stop it. There's danger here. And then someone accidentally trips over and sets off the wind machine that they were going to use later on when they were taking the wedding photos, and everybody's hair starts blowing, and it's pushing on David Tennant quite a bit, and he can't quite reach up the aisle, and he even starts like weirdly being in like all glitchy looking on camera, even though everybody else looks fine.
Yeah,
but
there's
he's,
a weird
like, frozen in place.
Yeah, there's like a weird ghosting effect, and I don't know. I guess it's because he's being kind of split away from Sarah Jane Smith, because he's going to his own. He's going to 23 or whatever, you know.
Yeah, and then the Trickster shows up, which is not a villain I'm familiar with. From Sarah Jane Adventures. I've never seen this guy before in my life, but he's a recurring villain as far as I'm aware.
He's a recurring villain.
This
is his third and final time in the show. The first time he goes back in time to save Sarah Jane's friend from drowning, like the moment before she drowns, and replaces her friend with Sarah Jane. So Sarah Jane Smith dies in this new timeline. The second time he appears is also in the past, where he saves Sarah Jane Smith's parents, and then Sarah Jane Smith's parents has to accept her death at the end. I mean, of course, this
awesome.
one, like every episode he appears in ends
seems
with...
to be very similar.
Yeah, but yeah, every episode ends with basically the main character going, "I have to kill myself in order to save the universe." Oh well, it's really weird.
That is really weird.
But also, you know, he was referenced in Turn Left. Apparently, the spider or the beetle on Donna's back was related to the Trickster. So, he's a fun villain. I remember he's probably the best Sarah Jane Adventures villain, and I always wanted him to appear in like Doctor Who or even Torchwood. I think Torchwood would be really interesting, because that show is a lot about trying to escape death, because obviously you have Captain Jack Harkness who's immortal. You have Tosh who wanted to escape death at one point, and like a pilot episode with her glove finger, you know, her glove who brought people back to death from life.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And there also are Susie, who also comes back to life. There's Owen, who comes back to life, and you know, like the whole show is about immortality and shit like that. So that would be a really interesting thing for Torchwood to explore, but it never happened. And, you know, I never want him to return if it gives the creator more money. So maybe we just forget about the Trickster from now.
But he shows up, and then David Tennant is like, "Oh my God, Sarah, no!" And we cut to credits, because this is part one of the Sarah Jane Adventures. And it's like a whatever episode. Yeah. They really, it's a lot of trying to quickly introduce Daddy so that they can have a wedding to then introduce the Trickster. Because like episode 1 and 2 feel so different in tone, it's crazy.
Yeah, you can tell they couldn't really have David Tennant in part 1 because they wanted him to be the cliffhanger. But the entire marketing campaign revolved around the minute where he's like, "Stop this wedding now," which is basically the cliffhanger. So I was disappointed he didn't show up at all in part 1, really. Like, I was so disappointed when I was in 2009. Like
Yeah, I can imagine. I was none the wiser in 2009, so I guess I got off lucky.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me.
But you know, this was an extended part of his farewell tour, basically, you know. So I was extra excited for this episode. Me and my mum watched it the minute it aired because we were just so excited for this episode. And you know, this is like 2 weeks before the Waters of Mars, so we fairly got David Tennant fever around this time.
Yeah, as did most of the UK. But with that, let us jump immediately into the Sarah Jane Adventures, the wedding of Sarah Jane Smith, Part 2 without any further ado.
So, we've been kept behind in this second.
Affirmative, Mistress Rani.
But the rest of the world, Mum and Dad and everyone else, they've moved on from here, going forwards in time. Why has the trickster trapped us here?
Oh, come on, Rani. You know the answer to that.
We're Sarah Jane's friends, all of us, her best friend.
Yeah, which means...
Hostages! He can use us to get at her!
We've met the trickster before, but we've never actually found out who he is.
Trickster is a creature from beyond the universe. Forever trying to break into our reality, manifest himself. He's one of the pantheon of discord.
That's a good name for a band.
Actually, not bad. He's an eternal exile who exists to wreak havoc. Well, we can fight him, the five of us, and we can win. Oh! Ha! That's it. Time trace. Just a hint of Sarah Jane. Oh, she's close.
Episode 2 begins. And we get a quick recap explaining to us what happened in episode 1, and we get David Tennant waking up the group of kids and trying to find out where they are. They're like, oh wait, hang on, now we're just in one location and there's no extras anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, this saves us a lot of money.
Yeah, this is like the definition of a bottle episode, isn't it? I never thought about it before, because part 1 is kind of linked to this, but kind of not linked to this. And also, David Tennant is just full energy here. He just finished playing the Doctor in Doctor Who, and now he's back here and he's just full energy again. It's insane. Like, that's one thing I hear about David Tennant. He's just non-stop energy.
Yeah. He's a passionate man who loves his job very much. And all the kids and David Tennant, they go to see the TARDIS. They don't find the TARDIS, or the TARDIS can't land in the time that they're in, and they all come to the realization that they're stuck in a 1-second time loop. So, it's a very cool idea. And we later find out Sarah Jane's also stuck in a time loop. She's stuck, like, they never say exactly how far ahead, but I always just assume it's 1 second ahead. Because why would you bother? Like, what's the difference between making it 1 second and 25? Like,
do they say she's ahead? Because I always presume that she's behind, and we just hear her echoes.
I mean, again, makes very little difference.
It does. It makes a huge difference, because there's one point where Sarah Jane walks through Rani.
She's a second ahead or behind. It doesn't make a difference.
If
she walks through Rani, then surely she's like ahead and they're behind.
No,
then she
because
through.
In that second she's changing the air around her.
That's because you're only watching it through Rani's perspective. You're not seeing it through. It literally makes zero difference.
It does, because you can hear an echo if she's behind, but if she's ahead, you can't hear the echo. So she must be behind.
You could hear an echo if she's ahead still, because it's only 1 second.
No, if it's 1 second.
Does an echo dissipate? Does an echo dissipate after a second?
If something makes sound, can you hear a sound 1 second before it makes sound?
No, but you'd hear it a second after it makes sound.
Exactly, so, which means
they're
behind.
Still progressing, but they're still experiencing time linearly in that 1 second time loop.
Yeah, so is Sarah Jane.
So,
it's
so
linear.
Like they're stuck in a second.
It's linear, but there's still an echo. Which means Sarah Jane
it doesn't matter if
must
she's
be
ahead or
behind.
behind, because it's linear, because they're both experiencing time at the same rate.
But also, the Doctor, Sarah Jane can't hear the Doctor, so he must be ahead. This is the first time we've argued in ages, and I think the last time we argued was about beans on toast in the very first Sarah Jane Adventures episode.
Yeah, but I also think Sarah Jane can't hear the Doctor because she's not using her sonic screwdriver. The Doctor's sitting scanning everything with his screwdriver, sonic screwdrivering it up, which allows them to see Sarah Jane and hear things. They don't talk about it. They don't establish any rules. They just say they're in a different timeline.
Yeah, this could have almost turned out to be like a Groundhog Day episode. Instead, it just turns into Groundhog Second.
Yeah,
it's almost like it's almost like Day of the Daleks. Almost like it's just one location. It's a bottle episode.
Even that. they're not even in like a proper time loop.
Yeah.
Nothing is looping. Like they're not being like, oh wait, this is weird. We're doing the same tasks over and over because there's nobody around. They're just they're essentially just in a bubble in space. Yeah. Like you'd get the same. It's like, oh, we've just put you into a different dimension. Like it doesn't matter. But they find that Sarah Jane discovers that she's been brainwashed by Daddy, and that she's got a red glowing ring that she finally sees is red and glowing, and throws off her hand. That bit, I was like, "Are you dumb, Sarah Jane? How have you not noticed that before?" Because it's like maybe the red glow was just for us audience members to know, like, oh, it's evil. But no, she definitely looks at it and goes, "Wait, fuck, that's glowing! Holy shit!"
And then we cut to David Tennant running up the stairs and then going back down the stairs, and he's like, "Oh yeah." He's explaining the trickster, and he says he's a pantheon of discord. And then Clyde's like, "That's a pretty good name for a band." And it is a pretty good name for a band. I'd listen to that band. Would you?
The Pantheon of Discord. I wouldn't listen to it because it reminds me of Discord, the service that we use to record this podcast.
Never heard of it. Never used it in my life. Don't know what you're talking about.
With your computer skills, I believe that.
Hey, I'm not that bad.
But there's a lot of back and forth, and right now the issue with this episode opening up is because this is a kid show, they give you information about like, oh, we're stuck in a time loop, this thing's going on, and then they'll give you the information again, and then they'll give you that information one more time just in case, and then they'll give it another time, as said in a different way. So it's a lot of people walking around being like, wait, what's going on? Wait, hang on. Wait. And it gets tedious to watch when you're like, we're 10 minutes into this episode, and the most that's happened is David Tennant ran up a set of stairs.
He's also very happy about seeing K9, which makes me happy. Fun fact: the Doctor was supposed to appear in the show before this. He was supposed to appear in the pilot episode, and his sole function in the pilot episode would have been to send K9 to the black hole, which would have been such a waste of David Tennant. Yeah, it would have been. And a waste of K9, as it was. But we also get a pretty decent scene where Sarah Jane confronts Daddy about, like, she was like, I thought I loved you. I thought that we could have had a life and that this was genuine, but it just turned out to be another alien trap. It's almost as if I'm in a TV show or something. This is awful. And he's like, wait, hang on. You haven't heard of how stupid I died. As he explains to her that he was at home one day and he was reading his post up the stairs of his house. So he got his post, he went upstairs, and then he started to open it as he was climbing downstairs. By the way, he's dressed in a full suit and has shoes on in his house, reading his post upstairs, as he then forgets how to walk, puts his foot completely sideways on the stair, tumbles down, and presumably breaks his neck or something. Like he dies, and then the trickster comes up and is like, "Hey, that was hilarious. Do you want to try that again and be like my puppet guy or something?" It just reminds me of a Family Guy clip where Peter Griffin keeps on falling down the stairs, and then he's eventually like, "Okay, I'm gonna go down the stairs very carefully," and then he somehow falls down the stairs even more violently. Like, how the fuck do you forget to? It's just such a weird death, and it just comes off as more comedic than tragic. Like, if he got hit by a car, that would be tragic. But instead, he just falls down the stairs, and then the trickster is like, "Hey, do you want to live? I can marry you off to like a hot lady." And he's like, "Yeah. Sure." That sounds like a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah, he's like, why would I ever question that? That sounds like an awesome time.
And I'm going to sell my house, and I'm just going to live, I don't know, in the streets, I guess. I'm going to sell my house for no reason. Why does he sell his house? I still don't understand that.
Get some cash. But the trickster shows up, and he explains even more about that this is evil and part of the plan and things that are going on, in case you weren't paying attention. And he's like, if you can agree to the deal, you can have a lovely, happy life with Daddy, like a completely regular domestic life, and it'll be cool beans. And she's like, but what's the trick, trickster? And he goes, I don't know.
Yeah, what is this trick? Because I still don't understand what the trick is.
They don't say. I don't think they say. Maybe we'll find out as we keep watching, but I don't remember.
I guess the trick is, because in the last episode she's like, "No, I'm gonna forget about my previous life of hunting aliens, and I'm just gonna focus on my new life with my new husband." I guess that's the trick.
Yeah,
she wouldn't.
The trick is you're happy. Haha, got you. Fucking, you fell for it. You've got a happy, comfortable life. Ah, take that.
Although, to be fair, you don't really need Sarah Jane to hunt aliens anymore, because she's been dead for the last decade in the Doctor Who universe. She hasn't really been needed, has she?
I don't know. Would Flux have happened if Sarah Jane got involved? But yeah, she's like, I don't know what the trick is, but Guy's like, just marry me. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Let's just marry me and have a good time. The episode continues as the Doctor ends up meeting the Trickster, and they have a conversation. Also, the Trickster's wearing black now for some reason. Don't worry about that.
Well, he was only wearing white with red, and because he wanted to pretend to be an angel, and also a virgin, I guess.
Yeah.
But also, this scene completely rewrites like Time Lord canon. Apparently, the Doctor always knew about the Trickster because it's something he always was taught about as a kid, I guess. It's interesting.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it doesn't matter. But this is where David Tennant explains to us the horrifying stakes of the episode, where the Trickster will give Sarah Jane a happy life for her remaining years on the planet, but she's going to forget about the green goobers that she's been seeing sometimes and saving. Which I get, she can, her losing her memory and kind of forgetting who she was is a bad thing, but it's not like the end of the world, is it? You're saving a life. She's still going to be happy. She does genuinely love the guy, At the end of the day, I would just kind of let her decide. I wouldn't actively go out my way to stop the Trickster in this one. I'd be like, hey, Sarah Jane, this is a you call, because the world will be fine. They straight up, Clyde's like, the aliens are going to attack and there's going to be no one here to save the Earth. He says that to the Doctor.
I mean, Sarah Jane, in the Sarah Jane adventures, Sarah Jane usually deals with small scale stuff, there's evil clowns running about the city, or we're going to this spooky house now. There's nothing really large scale end of the world stuff. What stuff is usually kept for Torchwood or Doctor Who, or even Unit as a team deal with end of the world stuff. In the grand scheme of things, I mean, maybe there's 100 deaths every 10 years, something like that. 10 deaths a year without Sarah Jane, which grand scale isn't that big. We don't really care, but but as the Trickster is speaking to the Doctor, after he says, I embody multitudes, there's a looped shot of the Doctor reacting, because I guess we didn't have enough in the budget to get enough coverage, so it's like a proper boomerang shot of a Doctor just reacting to it. It's really funny.
It is very funny. And then the Trickster leaves and the TARDIS starts to reappear on the wall for no real reason, because it's got this Deus Ex thing where it's like, oh, I'm here to save you now, Doctor, so that we can get given this weapon to Clyde, and then you can kill the bad guy, and then everything will be okay. Okay, I'm back. Okay.
Yeah, the Doctor says something like the TARDIS time energy counteracts with the Trickster time energy, and they kind of I don't know, I don't care, it's just jumble mumble, it's Doctor Who, it doesn't make sense.
The Doctor climbs in and then he slams the door on Clyde's face. And Clyde gets electrocuted and dies.
Clyde gets zapped by Arton energy, which is why he ends up swapping bodies with Matt Smith the next season, which we've already covered, the death of the Doctor. We enjoyed that episode, One thing about the death of the Doctor is Matt Smith actually interacts with Sarah Jane Smith in that episode, unlike this episode where maybe they have like 2 minutes of interaction in total.
Yeah, right at the end. Yeah.
Because I remember being disappointed by this episode not having enough Doctor and Sarah Jane stuff. Like, you hear, oh yeah, the Doctor's coming to Sarah Jane adventures, they're going to solve a mystery or something, and they don't interact. It's great.
Yeah, it's very cool. But Clyde's like, I have superpowers now, so I'm gonna go use my superpowers to just kill the trickster. Okay, and then he like calls out the trickster, and the trickster's like, "Ooh, what do you want? I'm a spooky guy." And Clyde's like, "I don't know." As he walks out, and the budget for the episode got so low that they're just in a white void now.
And also you can tell that Clyde was shot from the waist up because they tried to cover it with like white smoke, but you can still see that there's no bottom to Clyde as he's walking around.
It's very funny. And the trickster's like, "What do you want?" And Clyde just says some nonsense, and the trickster's like, "Oh, you're just here to say nonsense to me? Go away." And then Clyde grabs his hand and electrocutes the guy, which allows the TARDIS to break through the energy time bubble thing, I guess.
I guess because, the trickster is technically like, almost close
distracted.
To death. Yeah, because you can't control the time bubble anymore, which allows the TARDIS to escape, I guess.
Yeah, and break through either forwards or backwards to where Sarah Jane is.
Backwards.
And distract her from getting married. We don't know either way. They don't say. And
I'm gonna ask the writer of this episode on Twitter, and then he'll be like, "I've just read some of your tweets. You like trans people. You support the trans community. That's garbage." Yeah, that's what he'll say.
He'll call you a groomer and then say that I'm right and that you're wrong.
Good times.
This distracts Sarah Jane enough for her to be like, "Oh, by the way, Daddy, you died. You're a dead guy. You broke your neck walking down the stairs in the most dumbest way possible." And he's like, "But I don't need to be a dead guy. We could get married and live a life together, and that could be cool." And Sarah Jane's like, "Nah." He's like, "Oh shit, okay, cool." And then the Doctor's like, "Bro, you gotta kill yourself." And so he does. He withdraws his agreement to the trickster and throws the ring at him, which causes him to like vanish. There's a good line Sarah Jane has where it's very much like a writer being like, "Oh, I'm so clever," where she's like, "I love you, but I can't like love you."
Yeah,
it's something like that, where it's like, "Aha, you said the thing, but then you said the thing in a different way." That's smart. And he vanishes into, I guess, nothing, where he dies.
I was half expecting to see the moment of him walking down the stairs again, like breaking his neck.
What happens to his body?
Yeah, I don't.
They cut back to the wedding and he's just gone. Is he back in the house, the abandoned house for sale? Is a poor letting agent going to come over to that house to take some more updated photos off it for the website and find a corpse just at the bottom of the stairs? Like, what happened to the body?
Maybe he got separated from his body, and that's why he had to sell the house and not have contact with his family anymore. Like, maybe.
But where is the body?
It's buried underground, I guess. Maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
Or maybe he just wakes up and he's inside the burning. No, what's the thing he called when you're inside of the burning thing?
The crematorium. Yeah, I don't know what the machine is.
He's
called.
At the crematorium right now because his funeral just happened, and he wakes up and his body is burning. He's like, "Ah, shit."
But it's a very sad moment where Sarah Jane has to be like, the wedding's off, everybody," and she walks away as the groom has just vanished, and it's very depressing.
Yeah. Liz Sladen's acting is really good in this episode, I would say. But I still don't I don't buy the emotions because the connection between the two of them is so forced and just out of the blue. But Liz just crying on the floor and the doctor running up and comforting her is really nice.
Yeah, it's solid acting, and it's like a grade higher than you would normally see for a kids show. It's not like amazing acting. She does like amazing acting when she's on Doctor Who. She's doing like pretty good acting.
Yeah, like you know,
episode.
that scene where she walks through a power plant is probably the best acting in the entirety of Doctor Who.
Phenomenal. So gripping. But she's like, oh, Mr. Smith, I need you, and then like all of her kids and stuff come back, and then the Doctor comes back. And there's a cute moment where Rani asks to get on the TARDIS, and the Doctor tells her to fuck off.
My TARDIS?
Yeah. And then he's like, okay, fine, you can come in. And they all get in, they get a look around the set, and it's very fun. It would have been a fun day at work for sure. Being one of those kids being like, oh man, we get a look at the TARDIS set. This is awesome.
Like apparently when these kids found out they were going to work with David Tennant, they were just so excited. You know, what fun.
Oh yeah, it would be mental. He's like, you know, it's super exciting, and also he is like mega star status in the UK at this time. You know, like he is beyond famous, specifically in the UK.
And you know, everything you hear about the guy, just the nicest guy ever, apparently. Like, you can just imagine him having good conversations with these kids off screen about their career and shit like that, you know?
Yeah. And then they ask if they can travel through time, and Sarah Jane's like, no, you've got stuff to do, and you've been told off by the Jadoon or something, which I assume is a reference to another episode.
Yeah, because they got grounded by the Jadoon, like, in the opening of season 3. Fun episode.
And then we get a very nice goodbye with Sarah Jane and David Tennant, where Sarah Jane is like, will I ever see you again? The Doctor's like, and then she's like, he's like, do you think anyone, like, please remember me, Sarah Jane? And she's like, nah. But it's you know, it's a very touching scene.
Yeah, the Doctor says, don't forget me, Sarah Jane, which is an exact mirroring of the end of The Hand of Fear, where Sarah Jane is like, you won't forget me, Doctor, as the exact opposite thing that happens here, which is really nice. And apparently Liz Sladen didn't catch on to the fact that it was a direct mirroring of her scene with Tom Baker. And she was like, I guess David Tennant must have picked up on it because he's a super fan. But you know, what I find weird is, really, that scene was written by Tom Baker and Liz Sladen, so it feels like she would have noticed. But I guess
it was a long time ago.
I guess.
You know, it was a long time ago, and she doesn't give a shit about Doctor Who. This was a paycheck for her. She had no care around that. You know, she's just old and probably forgot. Like,
if you read her autobiography, she was very happy about the fact that David Tennant's last performance as the Doctor was on her show. She was super happy about it. Yeah, he never came back.
Never came back as the Doctor. We've never seen him again. He's never really talked about Doctor Who in interviews that he's done.
Yeah.
You know, it never comes up. It's like, it was such a big role for such a brief period of time. You know, it was a really like flash in the pan moment for him. So strange. But that is the end of the Sarah Jane Adventures, The Wedding of Sarah Jane Smith Part 2, and also Part 1, I guess. We finished that earlier in this episode. What do you think, Scott, of this, looking back at the Sarah Jane episode?
You know, I honestly don't have any strong feelings one way or the other, you know. I remember being really super let down by this as a kid because, as I said, I just wanted more scenes of the Doctor and Sarah Jane because, you know, we didn't really get that much in New Who. Well, I guess we got it in, like, School Reunion and Journey's End for a bit, but I would have just liked more, you know, scenes where David Tennant and Sarah Jane Smith are investigating something, like they're equals and we're just communicating to each other or something. But as it stands, the episode is fine. It's entertaining enough. It's a good use of 60 minutes of your time, I guess. There's worse things to watch. It's fine. What about you? It's
fine. Yeah, it is fine. It's like whatever. it's like mindless entertainment. Like I watched this morning when I was playing Halo, and it was just like, noise in the background really, because you don't need to pay attention to what's going on because they tell you every 5 seconds what's going on. So it's easy to follow. It's like a light kids show. If you're looking for a children's show to watch for some reason, like, this is fine for it. It's whatever. David Tennant is good in it. It's silly fun, but yeah, it didn't really rock my world. I don't think it's as good as the Matt Smith episode. I think I had more fun. I had more fun with the Matt Smith episode.
I think that's because the Matt Smith episode was written by Russell T Davies, and this episode, I'm going to mention his name for the first ever time in this in this podcast episode. Gareth Roberts usually writes the most bland, unforgettable Doctor Who and Sarah Jane Adventures episodes. Like, he wrote the episode with Shakespeare that referenced J.K. Rowling a lot, and you can understand why he might have referenced J.K. Rowling.
Good old J.K., as David Tennant says.
Yeah, and
in
you know
that
what?
episode.
The Shakespeare
Christ.
Code was also a very bland, unforgettable episode. So he has he has that kind of track record, and nowadays he's just an angry, bitter old man who doesn't see why the way he's acting is very hypocritical, because he's also a gay man, but yet uses the same method of anti-trans, whatever, garbage human being.
Yeah. There's no helping some people. Some people are terminally online. And if somebody becomes terminally online, they're lost forever.
Yeah.
They are one with the void now. But yeah, it's whatever. It's a whatever episode. I had a fun time, though. Next week is somehow already the end of August. And we will be looking at the news of the Doctor Who sphere and summing it all up in one easy to digest episode. It's been a quiet month as far as I'm aware. We've not really had much reveals.
There's nothing to talk about next week. So
look
it's
forward to that one. That'll be a good episode.
We're in August. Nothing really much has happened this year, but we'll see what happens,
We're in this slow build. It's the quiet before the storm, because very soon we will be watching this new actor called David Tennant play the Doctor. I'm very curious as to how he'll handle that.
Oh, it's crazy how we still have 3 hours of David Tennant as the Doctor to watch. That's so exciting.
3 hours so far. You think he's not coming back again? He's coming back again after this.
True.
So he's not done. He's not done. But yeah, next week is the news, as it is the end of August, and then into September we will be continuing our look through Doctor Who chronologically as we look at the episodes Stolen Earth and Journey's End for David Tennant's era, and then the Pandorica opens and the Big Bang for Matt Smith's episodes, and I cannot wait to get to those ones, because Pandorica opens and Big Bang, that is some top tier Matt Smith performances. Absolutely amazing episodes.
I can't believe we're almost at the end of a chronological look at Doctor Who this year.
I know. Yeah,
what
I know,
is that?
Wild.
7 episodes left of our chronological look. That's insane.
It is insane. I was just looking at we have a big Google Doc with our schedule on it, and whenever we finish an episode, I highlight the episode in green to be like, it's done. And I was just looking at it, it's like, Christ, I can't believe, like, I remember looking at this in the we were doing the Unquiet Dead, being like, wow, look at all these episodes we have, and now we're almost at the end of this sheet. I'm like, Christ, where has the time gone? Like,
crazy.
It is crazy, but look forward to that. In the meantime, you can watch this podcast in video form at youtube.com/whowatcheswho. We're very close to 40 subscribers on YouTube now, which is crazy. Nice. It sounds like a small number, but the first 2 years of this podcast, we basically had 10 subs. And this year, we have just been racking up basically 1 or 2 subs a week every time we upload an episode. It's very cool to watch. So it'd be cool if we could get it to 40. And we passed 3,000 views on the channel. Awesome. By the time this episode goes up, or this episode specifically might be the episode that pushes us to 3,000 downloads in the audio sphere as well, which we hit 2,000 this year as well, didn't we?
Yeah. We've got 2943 so far, so we're only 57 away. Quick math.
Yeah. Yeah, so we will, which would officially, like, it already is. This year has broken records for us as a podcast. This has been the best year this podcast has ever had. That every week seems to top the week before it. It's been crazy. Very, very cool stuff. You can listen to us in audio form on Spotify, Podcast Addict, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, anywhere you listen to podcasts. And if you are, give us a review. It really helps out the show and promotes us to other people as well. That's just how the audio algorithms work, apparently. You can find us on Facebook at Who Watches Who, and we are on X.com at Watches Doctor. But who knows if that'll still be a website by the time this episode goes up. The way things are going, I don't really care. You can follow, if you're interested in some chill ass gaming time, you can find my gaming channel at Psychedelic Gaming Hobos on YouTube. It's a new project I've recently started with my friend. That's a really, really good time. I recommend having a wee nosy over there and say that you came from the podcast. That'd be awesome. I'd love to see that. That'd be really cool. But anyway, until then, we will see you next week with the news. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.